I would like to call to the stage Paulo Rodrigues, which will be who will be the moderator of the panel, and I would also like to call Paulo Rodrigues Silva from IBM, Pedro Soares from Oracle, Luís Ferreira da Silva, Nuno Miguel Mendonça, Luís Rolo Martins, and John Woods. Give it up for our panel, please.
So good morning, everyone. Quite a big panel today. I hope we all have time to speak a little bit about each of your endeavors in this space. Before we start, I just would like to give each of the panelists just a brief introduction. Maybe starting with you, just a brief introduction of what you're doing in this space.
So, good morning, everyone. So it's pleasure to be here. My name is Luís Silva. I'm coming from Microsoft, Portugal.
Good morning. My name is Paulo Rodrigues Silva from IBM, and I lead the blockchain practice here in the region, and I'm part of the FSS CTO office for IBM.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Pedro Soares. I'm a solution architect at Oracle. I'm called a blockchain champion for Iberia, so elected for Oracle to do that. I hope to talk to you about blockchain.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Miguel Mendonça. I'm a cybersecurity consultant at UI. I hope to give some examples of how security is involved in the blockchain, and to participate in the debate and adding some interesting questions in this disruptive technology.
Hello, good morning. My name is Luís Martins. I'm head of enterprise architecture at SIBS. SIBS is the major payments processor in Portugal, currently with more than 90% of payments in Portugal being processed through SIBS. So obviously blockchain is something we are very keen on looking at and using in the near future.
Thank you. Hi, I'm John Woods. I'm an architect and applied cryptographer at Consensus.
So, welcome everybody. Today's discussion is around digital transformation. And how does that affect the corporates today? What is this challenge that all the corporates have to face every day in terms whether it's a disruptive approach or augmented approach to whatever the corporates already have in place? So I would start with Luís from SIBS, just to give us a little bit of an overview of how it is for a corporate like SIBS to look into this challenge, namely in regards to blockchain. How can that be tackled, and how do you see it moving forward?
Okay. Moving forward with blockchain. Well, we are a payments processor. We've been around in the Portuguese market for over 35 years, so there's a lot of legacy, but we usually say that we have been the long-lasting fintech in Portugal. We always look at new stuff, and we're always investigating. Mm-hmm. Digital transformation, as we've come to learn by our own experience, is not only about using technology in new ways, it's mainly changing the mindset of the organization. We need to move from a product/service-centric business model to a consumer and a customer business model, and become much more focused on the consumer needs and what needs to be put in place for a good user experience and consumer usage of the technology.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that your initiative that you have currently engaging with startups might help you in moving forward with that approach in terms of embracing the
Yes. We for the past 2 years we've we've driven a startup acceleration program, SIPS Pay Forward,
Mm-hmm.
and that's part of our plan to engage with startups, to engage with fintech companies, to try to set up what the future, mainly what the future of payments will be for the end user, for the end customer.
Okay.
2 years ago, we already had some experiences with a startup using with blockchain, which seemed quite feasible, although things always tend to get stuck on the business model side.
Mhm.
You know.
Okay.
Business models have been defined and are in place for the way we currently make business and for the currently known players.
Okay.
So a disruptive technology like blockchain and changing the way those players come into the picture is one of the hardest parts.
Okay, so taking your words in regards to the business model and maybe redirecting the question to Miguel, which is right next to you,
Yes.
what would you say in terms of the business models? Because in fact, if you don't have the right business model, you can have the perfect technical solution, but then you don't have the traction of the end user, right? So
Yes,
what's your
totally.
take on that? Have you been
Uh,
discussing business models with your customers, or?
Yes, sure. I think that to include blockchain in the business, you have to start from the business model and the business processes. That would be the first step, because if you look at blockchain as a technology and you want to integrate the blockchain in your company just from the technology side, you won't succeed, because the thing that is interesting on blockchain is how blockchain can change and make more efficient the business processes that are legacy in companies in most of the sectors. For example, I don't know, like in every sector you will have and you have inefficient business processes, and you have to assemble a team of technological people, but you have to join in that technological people the business analysts to really assess what are the business processes that can be made more efficient.
So I'm looking to John, talking about business models and different ways of operating. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit about how consensus is built up and how do you tackle that, please.
An easy question. Okay. So there's 5 main branches of consensus, and I'll just touch on them real quick, just to give a feel for it. So obviously it was set up by Joe Lubin, who's a real advocate of working decentralized. So I actually worked previously in the Central Bank of Ireland, and before that I was a trader for Citibank in derivatives. So I've worked in structured employment. I've never worked in a place like this before. It's very unusual the way the whole company's fleshed out. So the 5 big branches are: 1, they've got a lab section that's building out tools, like developer tools, to make developing smart contracts on Ethereum easy, right? And one of them is called Truffle, for example, and that allows developers to quickly, within a couple of seconds, get the boilerplate code they need to get their smart contract developed, up and running. And they're also developing rich and simple to use tools, like, for example, blockchain emulators, so that you don't have to pay, in Ethereum to test your smart contracts, but doing that in a way that's really easy, that's visual, that's intuitive, that gives good feedback. So they've really invested heavily in developing out rich developer tools. That's number 1. Another way they're doing it is by providing a center of excellence. So I work in Dublin, and that's one of the major hubs for what they call their solutions arm, which is where effectively they're providing consultancy services in terms of blockchain development. But it's a little bit more than that, because they're not interested in the traditional model that maybe you might see from your stereotypical consultancy companies. So it's not about charging people for time and materials, or decks or things like that, or presentations. Instead, it's more about working with entities, institutions, and individuals that we find interesting and we think are actually bringing value to the space. They're building things that we care about, that they care about, not just for doing it for the sake of charging them a few bucks, but instead to work with them in order to be involved in things that make a difference, and also to give them a lot of technical help in achieving excellence. So writing smart contracts that won't break in 2 years' time, where you lose all your money. because we have some of the best people in the world in that sector. And then there's a couple of areas I'll just quickly touch on over the course of the next 20 or 30 seconds. One, we have a big academy arm that works to educate people. And a lot of that is available for free, where you can actually work with the Academy and Consensus to educate yourself or your developers and get them up to a high standard. There's an arm called Ethereal, which is focused on social impact aspects. And then, what is the last arm?
Seems like an octopus, right?
Yeah.
Just kidding. Seems like an octopus.
Of course. It's their venture capital arm.
Yeah,
so
okay.
they have an entire arm devoted to basically investing in companies that they feel like it's something that's interesting.
So you touched briefly the topic of having corporates working side by side with you.
Right.
And I would hand the question to Paulo here from IBM, just to briefly, what is your feeling in regards to blockchain in the CIO's agenda today? So a couple of years ago there was this curiosity, and CIOs were being pressured by their CEOs asking, what is this blockchain thing that is happening? But nowadays, is this topic becoming more serious in their agenda of the CIO?
Definitely. So 2 years ago, as a matter of fact, the blockchain came from the consumer industry. So regarding the concerns around privacy issues and transparency of data, and it was all about people, nothing about enterprises. If you recall from Satoshi's paper, the whole idea behind blockchain was to prevent any company or individual to change or modify data. But this became first a risk for companies that thought, well, this is a disintermediation play. And then it became a new paradigm in the way they looked at how to conduct business, because there's a saying in Portugal saying that secrecy is in the heart of your business. But we as consumers are no longer worried about how people succeed in their business by owning secrets. We care more about ethical behavior, and we care a lot about transparency. And this became a priority in many CIOs' agenda. So looking into the blockchain angle of transparency, of providing provenance of data and processes. And if 2 years ago nobody was doing anything on blockchain on the corporate side, last year we had already more than 400 projects being run by corporates trying to experiment with the technology, and this year we have already more than a dozen networks operating all over the world in financial services, in retail, in some specific industries. Some of those are highly regulated, and you would expect those industries like financial services, where third-party trusted partners do exist and supervisors are on top of the businesses, but now they are finding ways of overcoming the barriers between all the participants in their ecosystems and trying to come up with new business models. So definitely on the corporate side, blockchain is now one of the new tools in their IT tools.
Okay, so maybe Luís, giving you the mic a little bit, just to give the audience your overview on what your company is doing in regards to assisting corporates getting into the blockchain space.
Okay, very good. So I missed my previous intervention. So I'm responsible for cloud in Portugal. So we call it Azure, Microsoft Azure, and there is a bunch of services there. And that's the business I run in Portugal. So basically, the way we see blockchain, and I fully agree with Paulo. So this is a topic that's in the agenda of most CIOs right now. But the issue is that so CIOs are feeling a lot of pressure now because they have a lot of things that are very critical for the business to do. Blockchain is one of them, and we know that. But they have things like artificial intelligence, and the way they handle data. So I just want to say that from my perspective and what I'm seeing in the customers are blockchain is in their agenda. However, it's not their top priority. So we are seeing globally more and more proof of concepts and projects moving from development to production, mainly in the finance sector. But well, this is taking some time. So the way Microsoft sees and the work that we have been doing is basically trying to simplify the way that people use blockchain, and most of the projects failed, and we know basically why the projects failed. And what we are trying to do is make it simple and make it a platform that everyone can use without caring about infrastructure. So let's focus on the business, and this is one of the main reasons because the projects fail. So let's focus on the business side of in the problem that we are really tackling instead of all the other stuff that is.
And maybe Pedro, you can elaborate a little bit in regards to what is your positioning currently in regards to blockchain, and if you feel that, for example, the technology is not still at the stage that can tackle scalability issues from some of the use cases that are more relevant to our customers.
So, first of all, I agree with all of these guys. So, everybody is looking into blockchain. So most of the big vendors started to create technology to actually supply solutions to the enterprises. Of course, with different ideas than not anarchic ideas, like Satoshi with Bitcoin, but to supply solutions for a specific use case. What we have seen in most of the customers in Portugal, not only over the world, we have lots of customers in production, but in Portugal we have seen a different perspective. So CIOs know what blockchain is, but they are starting to use it for the wrong reasons. Because I have, let's say, I have some budget to do innovation, so I want to do blockchain, but not because it fits, but because well, I need to go to my administration and say, I'm the first one on this industry to use blockchain. So it's more like the difference between, let's say, knowledge and wisdom. Like how can I say, like the tomato is a fruit, so it's a good analogy. So it's knowledge, but wisdom is not to make fruit salad with tomatoes. So it's the same thing where I'm seeing CIOs in most of my areas of working, so like financial services and telcos, majorly on telcos. So I've seen lots of use cases that make not sense to use blockchain, but since we have the technology, let's actually talk to the clients and tell them, okay, it's probably not the best fit, but let's explain what we have. So what Oracle did was grab the project that actually IBM started with Hyperledger. Okay, so we started to use Hyperledger Fabric. So that's old news because it's 2-year-old project. But now we're looking into the future. So how can we help the enterprises to actually fit these new needs that the world actually have, like let's integrate with Ethereum, or like in financial services, we have seen lots of companies looking into Corda. So why not just do interchain to this too? So that's what we have been working worldwide on building. So that's our new thing. So because we think that the enterprises need actually an environment that they control, but also to communicate with the other, the world, because they're starting to grow lots of blockchains. But okay, how can we communicate between them? So that's what we have been working on.
So I would ask Luís from SIPS the following question. So would you say that the current constraints around implementation of blockchain are related to the technology itself, or to the fact that it's really hard to find people that are truly qualified to address use cases, not on a POC or MVP approach, but for fully fledged solutions integrated with the legacy systems like your own that you have working in Portugal?
Yes, I would agree. The technology concerns will be overcome quite quickly.
Mhm.
Technology is really, blockchain technology is really not that old, and we know we're in a hype. Everyone's talking about it, and that will drive further evolution of the technology itself. Concerns about scalability and performance and all that will for sure be overcome in the next couple of months. The main concern is how to fit that technology in the working models that we have now. We need to find the right use case. Just having the budget for doing some sort of project and then burning up that budget and having no real value, that will kill the blockchain adoption. As far as SIBS is concerned, we have been very cautious on how to find the right use for the technology that gives an actual business value. And in plain terms, business value can come from higher revenues or lower costs or a mix of both. And we still need to find that sweet spot where the right use of the technology will make the right impact, and then we'll have something to start working on.
Okay, can you pass the mic to John, please? So, and picking up on Luís' words, I would say that we have these two sides of the same coin. You have the incumbents that are looking into blockchain in a way of getting cost reduction or risk mitigation or working with the regulator in a more effective way. And then you have the other side of the coin, which is in fact the disruptive approach, working with cryptocurrency or even working with central banks for digital currency issued by the central banks. How is consensus positioned in between these two worlds? Is it in a way to make it happen somewhere in between? How does that work?
Sure, good questions. I'd like to just say, from a personal and professional perspective, I agree completely with what everyone has said. And I think from a personal point of view, I see regularly, because I've worked in central banks, I've worked in big banks, I've worked in consultancy companies, a lot of times they try to shoehorn blockchain into things that don't really make sense, you know. And one of the things that I really was thrilled about with Consensus is, during my interview process, they explained to me some projects that would have been money makers that they just didn't get involved in because really it just didn't make sense. It might have made a couple of $1 million in the short term, but it would have been reputationally damaging to be involved in these things. So I completely agree with all that stuff. And just a quick point, I do agree that there's not yeah, you've got your solution architects, your enterprise architects, but I think you need an unusual mix of also some understanding of applied cryptography and the mathematics, and also public key crypto and other basic primitives around that the blockchain is composed of, which have existed since the 70s and 80s. Really, it's just a hack of those technologies or an application of those technologies in a specific way. So I think sometimes it can be hard to get guys who get it, who are also senior enough to affect change in the organization. Do you know what I'm trying to say about that? Okay, to kind of answer your question, hopefully, how does Consensus walk the line between crypto anarchy and supporting big business?
Yeah.
I think because I have actually came from contributing to open source cryptocurrency projects that I'm passionate about, and I would consider myself probably crypto anarchist to a degree. But I think Joe's vision is less about disruption in terms of destroying fiat systems and central banks. I'm talking about Joe Lubin, who's the CEO, who's effectively his startup, right, his project, and we're all working with him. And it's more about creating, and I don't want to sound like I drank the Kool-Aid, but it's more about creating a decentralized world as much as possible, and getting involved in the projects that we feel have high social impact, and can actually change the world for the positive. I think that's what his overall vision is. And if you look at the kind of projects that he's getting involved in, they all have that ideology where we're trying to bring the technology to make an impact into areas that are important. Now, a lot of the projects we see that come across my desk would tend to be ones by big industry and by enterprise, and the company is very focused on delivering correct and empowering enterprise solutions. But they've also got involved in other smaller projects, so they're relatively agnostic to what they get involved in once they feel, in my view, that it's delivering something positive. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and I would ask Miguel maybe to complement with his point of view in terms of how to implement a blockchain strategy. I would say that more importantly than saying what you should do, it's what you shouldn't do, or what is the key aspects that will for sure make your strategy fail if you go for blockchain.
Yes, I think that blockchain must be included in the digital transformation strategy of a company. And we know that digital transformation is all about speed and to be the early adopters or the early developers of some technology. So I think that for you to be successful in this space, you have to begin researching about the technology, bringing on the expertise that is not at this moment an overcrowded sector. It's quite the opposite. You have to bring on that expertise or build that expertise in-house. But this is something that it's important, bringing the expertise and start building on with a vision, with a strategy. And what I mean by this is you shouldn't focus on the technological part of the technology. You should focus on the business problems that your company has. And because we know that the technology is not ready yet, what I mean by this is if you want to use public blockchains, for instance, you don't have at this moment the capability of going into production with a product on Ethereum, for example. But you should have a clear vision of what the future will look like. For example, the vision of UI is that public blockchains will be the future. Of course, UI is developing products using private blockchains, but always with the vision that the private blockchain will at some point interact with the public blockchain. So this is the kind of things that companies should be focused on, not building proof of concepts that won't have any future applicability. So yes, I think that would be it.
I would argue that if you have incumbents already in place, there's a lot of investment in infrastructure and software, that it's difficult to compare with new disruptive approach. And I'm saying this because for a number of reasons you see a more willingness approach from countries where they don't have anything than countries that, for example, like Portugal or within Europe, where legacy is already up and running. It works quite well, it's efficient, so you start to wonder if it really makes sense to move into another kind of technology or not. And that is why it's so important to have cloud providers to assist the customers on that case. But having said that, how can in a corporate environment, how can we move forward and go beyond that margin additional advantage that blockchain might bring to a specific use case? Because if you know what I mean, in other countries it's straightforward. It's a no-brainer business case. In more developed countries, you have a marginal advantage that can be exploited by marketing approach. A lot of them have done that already. But how could we help corporates to move forward with that legacy that has to be taken into consideration?
Yes, good question. I think that to really go through blockchain, you have to figure out what are the use cases that bring on not marginal advantage but huge advantages, like assessing what are the business models that can be introduced by blockchain. And we have seen this on the news, for example, on the real estate sector. With blockchain technology, you can really bring new business opportunities and models that weren't there, and the technology can bring on. For example, I was talking about real estate, where you can now make an historically illiquid market liquid. You can fraction an investment in a mansion or in a property, and tokenize that investment and bring it on to retail investors. This is something that is new. I think it's really disruptive, and this is where companies should be focused in bringing on new business models, and including blockchain in the digital transformation strategy.
Paulo, can you, for example, from your point of view, give some other examples of what has been done already using blockchain in terms of relevant use cases that might be interesting for the audience?
Sure. Starting with the most important, which is the generic approach. How do companies succeed in creating blockchain prototypes or pilots or creating real networks? They start by thinking outside of the box. So nobody succeeds if they think this is a technology that is to be used like any other technology from the past, which has been used only to produce competitive advantage and automate things or create things that are faster, more secure, but always within the boundaries of their organization. This is the first time where a technology is being used most proficiently if used on a external context. So the business analysts of most organizations don't know how to deal with blockchain if they don't understand the concept of a larger ecosystem, of dealing with the processes that are outside of their organization and with partners. And so the most successful joint ventures, I would say, or ecosystems are within the transparency kind of concepts, like food safety networks, trying to trace a product from the producer to the shelf in the supermarket. So that's a very interesting idea, something that seems rather simple to do with any technology, but blockchain provides the end user, the consumer, a proof of origin of a product and a source of quality, enhanced quality of a product. And we can derive from this fraud detection systems, which we see this being applied to the drugs industry. I would say legal drugs, of course. So trying to detect if you buy something out of the internet and you get a pill, is this pill that is a round white stuff, is this the real thing or not? So you can imagine that using sensors, IoT images, it provides you some technology, some technological way of getting access to information, but in the back end, does that information provide you anything related to a truthful event? Is that something that is verified? So blockchain is now the additional tool in your tool set, as I said, that will give you provenance and a way to verify and validate information, whether it comes from a truthful source or not. So reliability, it's something new.
Are these use cases already in production, or is it kind of like a concept in a PowerPoint at this stage?
No, there are many networks in production in real life, creating networks that may start from a founding member which thought of a specific use case and tried to apply it successfully and then allowed others to join. I would say that's the case for the shipping industry and logistics with Maersk. They created or they tried to apply their business model and their knowledge about all the documentation, all the processes in this very complex logistics world of shipping companies. And they created a network. We've joined them in a joint venture to provide this as a platform that can be used globally by all the participants. So port authorities, governments, shipping companies, distributors, and they've all joined this specific network for that particular purpose. On the other side of things, on any logistics network, you will see payments and insurance claims being transversing all this universe. So there are multiple banks also trying to use blockchain to do trade finance or import-export business and finance using blockchain for that specific purpose.
Is it permissioned ledgers or public ledgers at this point?
So our view is, since we are focused on our customer needs, and IBM doesn't sell to the consumer itself, it's a company more focused to large enterprises or small enterprises, but still enterprises. So we are using the concept of permissioned private blockchains.
So maybe asking Microsoft, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you already support two different kinds of blockchains, namely Hyperledger Fabric and also Corda. And it seems like we're back in the 90s where we started with the intranets, and then we've moved on into the internet world. So it kind of like seems the same, where we have this permission networks approach, where we are safe in a safe environment with our customers, and gradually evolving to a state of mind where we can work interoperability between permissioned ledgers and public ledgers, like for example Ethereum, or even Ethereum has its own permissioned instance with Quorum. There's some kind of a permissioned approach for Ethereum. But question to you, would you see that Microsoft would foresee in the next few years not only Fabric and Corda, but maybe other kinds of networks, namely public ledgers, so that customers could engage in that technical experimentation and interoperability between all of them?
Good question. So, and thank you. Basically, the vision of Microsoft is not to create another ledger. So we are not in this space. So, as you said, and it's correct. So, we are basically we support, and our plan is to support every single ledger that is used outside. So. So we do support Hyperledger, we do support R3, we do support a bunch of other ledgers that are available for free. So the vision is, and Microsoft is in the enterprise space, so the vision is really to democratize the use of this technology, and making sure that if you have to focus on your business, not very much on the technology. So I'm assuming that every one of us love blockchain. So it's very easy that every single problem that we see in the real world, we see a solution within blockchain. But the fact is that to be successful with blockchain is it's much more than the ledger. So we are investing basically in three main areas. One is what we call the workbench. The workbench is basically something very, very easy for every one of us to start. So we have reference architectures. So you can just go to the Azure, subscribe a service. It's free of charge, and you can select the ledger that you want, the topology that you want. So you can start very, very easily. So, and this is one area of investment, the workbench, to make things really, really simple. The second area of investment is about startups. So we have what we call the marketplace. So sometimes we reinvent the wheel. We are trying to do some things that are already done. So we have in the marketplace currently 40 solutions that you can just go there and I want to use this. So very easy, very simple. You can just double click and make it run. So we have a program which is called the Microsoft for Startups. So we are really investing in the startups and bringing these startups to the platform, make the solutions available worldwide. So talking about cloud means that we are now in 54 regions worldwide. We are in China as well. So 140 countries. So you can, with a few clicks, you can put your solution basically available everywhere. And the third area of investment is what was called COCO framework, which is basically what we call a confidential thank you, framework built on top of Ethereum, and the results that we have so far are absolutely amazing. So it was presented and built this year by Mark Rusinovic, and basically we were able to do 1,600,000 transactions per second. So it's absolutely amazing. So you have the information, you can hide some parts of the information. So, and this is basically the three main areas of investment. So we want to work with everybody, and we want to make it really simple to use.
So John, from a customer point of view, there's always this concern of vendor locking, right? And you have 3 vendors in the panel. Each one of them has its own cloud service provider. They support different technologies, and they bridge to their customers, which is quite nice. It's not just about blockchain, it's about all the rest of the business that is already in place. And if a customer works with any of these companies, blockchain is an add-on. In your perspective, it's a little bit different, right? Because you're not actually a cloud provider. You're creating this technology. So I would like to hear, if possible, your approach on one. You're betting all on Ethereum, right? While other cloud providers are betting in different kinds of technologies, still to be defined which one is going to be best suitable for the customer. So isn't that a risk for consensus at this point?
To a degree. So I think we're kind of in a radically different space. By the way, I use Azure personally and professionally at times, and I think it's great. I also think Amazon Web Services is great, and Google Cloud is also great. I mean, it's incredible what you can do. You can provision, like you just said, things, a supercomputer in China in like 30 seconds. It is amazing. And we use these tools regularly, all of them, and in our different ventures with clients. But I think we're in a radically different space. I don't even think we're trying to be anything like, you know, Microsoft or an IBM and Oracle, because like Consensus is a project, you know, to a degree. It's like it's not even a startup. It's Joe's project, and it's just whether or not it ends up growing to the size of these kind of firms. I don't know. I think it remains to be seen. And I think he's not really trying to build out a new IBM. You know, it's not about doing that. It's about the impact of what you can bring to Ethereum. So Joe is a co-founder of Ethereum, right? And to a large degree, Consensus complement the open source development of Ethereum, because we are separate, right? We're kind of looking at Ethereum as kind of at the moment what we believe to be the best smart contract blockchain platform. There are others, of course, and we obviously watch them closely. But right now, we feel that that's the best platform for enterprise customers, certainly. And you know what Joe's trying to do, and what Consensus is trying to do is build, build positive, changing applications on that platform that help empower businesses and people to achieve, you know, what they want to achieve. So I guess we're in a different space. You know, we're not trying to do what you guys are doing. You're a complement to our service, in fact. And just to answer your question as best I can, which is around, are we betting everything on Ethereum? And I think, you know, one of the things I really like in Consensus is every couple of weeks, Joe gets on like a video call, and people can anonymously submit questions to him, you know, and put him on the spot, and he's got to like give answers. And that's been asked before, you know, what about, you know, Ethereum?
EOS and others. Yeah.
Right. What if there's a flaw in the, you know, SECP 256-1K curve, you know? There's a whole load of things that could cause problems with Ethereum or any other cryptocurrency. Of course, these are such nascent technologies. They're so new, right? They could break at any point. But I think, you know, what right now we're focused on Ethereum. Absolutely. Would we completely rule out ever we're looking at a different platform? No. I mean, you know, he's already said if other platforms come along that achieve better results, he would look at them, and the company would look at them. But right now, absolutely, we're focused on Ethereum.
Luís, from SIBS, do you at this point consider, for example, looking into public ledgers? Is it still too early in this stage, or is it SIBS going to be always on the private permissioned approach?
Well, always is a very definite. Not even on my lifespan. For starters, we will not be looking at public ledgers. You know, historically, the position of SIBs within the payments processing and the financial services world in Portugal, there's a high degree of trust in SIBs doing some centralized processing for all the banks in Portugal, and even for quite a few banks in other parts of the world, Central Europe or Africa, for instance. So I don't see it moving on to public ledgers in the near future. I do see it as being part of a network, of a permission ledger, for sure. Maybe 2019 will bring something up in that aspect. But moving to public, it will take a couple of years.
So it's fair to say that there might be customers that are naturally their natural tendencies to go for a permissioned approach because it makes sense to their business, and there are other customers that are more willing to go for a public ledger for their use cases. John, you want to add something?
I just would like to build on what you said, and I agree, and what Nuno said earlier on. I think it's really cool. Like, I came from a background where I used to work on open source cryptocurrency projects, and to me, before I joined Consensus, private ledgers were a waste of time. You know, because I felt like you don't benefit from the pure immutability that's driven by the hash rate that backs the public network, right? Which I guess is like the real power that I would have originally envisaged in the whole space. But actually, I've become more educated, and I now understand that there is a lot of efficiencies and a lot of great solutions that can be driven out with private blockchains. They are actually not as terrible as I used to think. And Consensus does both, right? We build things on public and we build things on private, and in fact they have an API where they can host the private chain for you and what have you, and maybe they use Azure under the hood, I'm not entirely sure, but you know, we host it and we provide kind of a hosted framework there. So we do both, and I've architected projects that do both, and there is definitely a need for private blockchains, and I think they are cool. But on Nuno's point, I think eventually it may be good if we can anchor them to the public blockchain for the immutability or the veracity of the data, you know, so to ensure that piece, even if it's only a hash link, even if it's only a small piece of data that's not about exposing the corporate data, but instead exposing a fingerprint of it or some way to ensure the veracity of that data, because then you benefit from the immutability and the hash rate of the public network, which is something you can't really do on private.
So,
and the very last thing I want to say just is there's, as you mentioned earlier on, there's a whole bunch of work being worked on in privacy technologies. And when I was in central bank, they were really, when I first joined, they were really against using cloud platforms, even though I was really pushing them. And eventually, corporates kind of swallowed the pill and realized, hey, it's okay to have our data because we can trust this encryption and it does work right. And of course, central banks are going to be the last to move to those kind of platforms because they're traditionally very conservative. But now nearly everyone is using cloud stuff, right? And I think when people are able to digest things like ZK Starks or ring signatures or stealth addressing and all of the different privacy technologies that exist, there's people working on mathematical techniques to ensure that data on public enjoys the immutability of public, but can also be private in terms of GDPR or in terms of other aspects like that. And once people can digest that and accept it the way they have for cloud, then maybe we'll see more people use public.
Yeah. So we're kind of almost wrapping up this session, and the session was around digital transformation, and I think we all agree at this point that we are at the stage where a lot of CIOs already did their homework. They know what blockchain is, they know where it applies, what it doesn't apply, what are the constraints in terms of scalability, the solutions that are out there in terms of the market, cloud providers, they all provide a lot of support for customers. And there's this word going around that 2019 is going to be the enterprise blockchain approach, which is the time where corporates already understand that we've gone through the experimentation phase. There's a lot of banks that already invested a lot of money, and it didn't serve them well in terms of ROI because it was still premature. But at this point, we have the technology, we have the knowledge, and we have the cloud providers to do it. So I would ask this question to all of the panelists, just to give the audience your view on what you feel it's going to be the next year, the 2009, the supposedly enterprise blockchain year. So starting with you, from your perspective.
So basically, so how can I say this? So it seems that in this space we are year after year telling that this year will be the year of blockchain. And but what I really believe is that we are now in the tipping point, meaning that most of the so as you were mentioned, so the industry are aware of this technology. So I really believe that the next year will be the year for enterprise blockchain, because we have a lot of companies pushing this, and we have 3 here, and pushing for simplification and pushing for the importance of doing blockchain now, not doing it tomorrow. And personally, I really believe that if you have a company today, and if you are not doing blockchain, and if you are not doing AI, you will be dead. So, or at least the probability of being dead will be very high. So just to finalize, so I just want to connect with all of you, and please, if you can, just go to azure.com and /blockchain, and you have all the information to get started. So you have hands-on labs, so you have use cases, you have all the documentation is there, and it's free. So that's
Paulo, your take, please.
Thanks. So in this journey, and looking into what 2019 will be, so in the past I spent my time doing enablement, educating people on the difference between Bitcoin and blockchain, between public blockchains and the business side of using blockchain, or the private permissioned blockchains. And we've done very well in terms of doing pilots, POCs, with companies that wanted to be on the paper saying, we did blockchain. And we moved past that into what we see now is a complete revolution in some industries, where everybody is trying to be on the new platforms in production. So 2019 for me will be a very busy year, because now in terms of services, we need to find a lot more resources to do all the projects that are coming. And so it's going to be a year of staffing, hiring people, and expanding the services. And that's it.
So for Oracle, actually this year was already a very full year on blockchain. Actually the service was only released in July, but we already have lots of customers in production, because it was different than the old approach to develop platforms. So we've developed on top of Hyperledger to actually meet the needs that the client has. So we focus on accelerators, on creating an admin console and stuff that operations need, okay, and also tools to actually help smart contracts being developed more easily. So we did not create a technology or a ledger. We created lots of stuff around Hyperledger Fabric that actually is already being using, like Paulo said, on all the ships and ports and all of that stuff. So the same one that can be interconnected more easily. So I think the next year will be even more stuff surrounding this, more looking into actually POCs, because the use cases already have been let's say eaten, so everybody has some kind of use case that wants to be used, and actually is to be putting hands into work and doing the POCs. I think it would be a very full year on that.
Miguel, from your side.
Yes, I agree with Pedro. This year has been the year of blockchain, but mostly companies are doing POCs and researching the technology to really understand how the technology will affect the business. The EY's global message is that next year will be the year that some prototypes will come to life, and yeah, I think that next year will be a big year for blockchain. And also, I would say that if I had the opportunity to once again become a student, I would surely start working on blockchain, because this is a sector that really needs the expertise and the smart contract developers and yeah.
Luís, from your side, what's your take on 2019?
Well, focusing on the financial services and payments processing, I see that 2019 is that perfect storm. We have reached critical mass on blockchain, and technology is evolved enough to do enterprise development on that. And all the stuff that was taking and financial services attention span for the past 2 years, GDPR, PSD2, with that open banking, biometrics authentication, are all out of the way or nearly out of the way.
Good point.
So
yeah.
it creates the space for looking at blockchain with a more stable approach than 2 years ago.
So as a matter of fact, it was good that you had all these regulations to tackle while the technology was being matured.
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
good point. Yeah, yeah.
I won't echo too much more. I just want to say the number of clients we have, the number of people coming to us, it's growing more and more. Even the number of staff in Dublin started at 3 back in April. Now we've got 40, right? So consensus is growing quite aggressively, and so are the number of clients coming to us. What I'd like to see in 2019 is just an end of the bear market. You know what I'm saying? Because I want to make some money, and I think one other last thing I just want to say is that if people want to work in blockchain, or if you're like your kids want to work there or whatever, they should be studying applied cryptography more than worrying about blockchain, right? It's the fundamental primitives that belie these things, like hashing algorithms, public key cryptography. They're the things they should learn, and there's loads of great resources on YouTube. There's a German a teacher called Christoph Parr, for example, and he has a slot. He works in the university in Germany, and he puts all his lectures up for free, and they're wonderful. So they're the things that I would focus on if I wanted to learn about this sector. And then when you watch the video about blockchain, you'll know what a hashing algorithm is. You'll know what the public key stuff is, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you've briefly mentioned the bear market, and I would relate that to the Gartner hype curve. And you see that blockchain is finally over the hype, which means that now we will start to differentiate the ones that are kind of like pushing some fake solution around it,
right,
or the ones that really are concerned with not only implementing but also maintaining the systems in production. And we've seen that in the previous conversations, where it's not just about deploying some smart contract, it's worrying about if that works the whole life cycle, integrates with the legacy systems, and if it really makes the customer confident. So yeah, so we're quite optimistic around 2019, and I just hope that this panel was interesting for you, and I would ask a round of applause to the panelists. Thank you so much.